York City is fascinating for architecture, and it's a great place for an architect to live.
I'll no doubt work on a number of other projects for top clients in the future, but this one will really stand out.
In Singapore, it's not a matter of whether to put up a multi-story building, but how high it's going to be.
The New York borough of Manhattan is one of the most densely populated urban areas on Earth. Nearly 6,000 skyscrapers are crammed onto an island that measures just under 88 square kilometers. Is this what all big cities are going to look like one day? More people, more traffic, more energy used. How can life in big cities like this be improved? It's a difficult question for architects, urban planners, and sociologists alike.
My name is Blake Karasik, and I'm an architect in New York City. I studied architecture at the University of Illinois, and I've lived in New York City for 3.5 years now. I like New York City because of the energy and the number of people and the urbanity of it. Because Manhattan is so dense, the only room for growth for buildings is to build up. And I've always loved tall buildings. As a child, I've always been fascinated with skyscrapers, and Manhattan is just the quintessential place to be if you want to build a tall building, because there just isn't any room to grow.
There's always a lot of work in Manhattan for architects. These days, they're trying to make their designs more environmentally friendly, whether they're renovating an old structure or working out the plans for a new one. Karasik has come up with a radical new idea, a high-rise structure that's designed for agricultural use, right in the middle of the city.
So this is what's trying to find out a renewable, I've always had an interest in agriculture, gardening, and being outside. So I thought this would be an interesting way to integrate architecture and a building. And I've always loved skyscrapers, so I thought vertical farming would be a perfect marriage of both agriculture and architecture.
Karasik's design for a 120-story eco-tower incorporates not only modern elements of architectural design, but also traditional agricultural themes.
Farming vertically is more advantageous than farming horizontally for the same reason why in large cities we build tall buildings. For the same reason we build tall buildings and skyscrapers, you would build a farm in a skyscraper format vertically so that you don't take up too much space down at the ground level and you can be more efficient with your land use.
Karasik is on his way to the southern tip of Manhattan, where one of the most distinctive skyscrapers in the Western world is now under construction. He's got an appointment with Udo Klages, CEO of the American affiliate of the German company Pohl, one of the world's leading manufacturers of metal construction panels. Those panels are a key element of the structure's glass and steel facade. It's one of the most prestigious contracts in the company's history.
We were familiar with the original design concept for the facade panels, but of course, you've also got to take into account the various technical elements that are involved in the actual construction, including the structural elements, reinforcement, leveling, the evenness of the surface, and so forth. That requires a certain level of expertise, which we have in Germany. They gave us the contract because they were more interested in quality than cost.
By the time the One World Trade Center structure is completed in 2013, it will be the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, rising just over 541 meters above the streets of Lower Manhattan. The tower will also be one of the most energy-efficient buildings of its kind. Panama City is located at the Pacific entrance of the world-famous canal. The capital of Panama has experienced rapid economic growth in recent years. And with the expansion have come the usual urban complications: more people and more vehicles. Panama City features the highest concentration of high-rise buildings in Latin America. They've been built in imitation of structures in the United States, in defiance of local architectural traditions and environmental concerns. But now, that's changing. Architect Gustavo Arango is taking part in a program that's aimed at encouraging a more sustainable approach to building design and construction. But because of the region's unique geography, Arango sees no alternative to skyscrapers.
Hola Carla, ¿cómo estás?
Bienvenido, Gustavo.
Gracias.
Arango and a colleague, real estate broker Carla Lopez Abello, says that public awareness of environmental issues is growing in Panama City.
Sí, está aumentando casi 20% en los próximos días.
Sí, 90% de los
90% of the high-rise buildings in Panama City are residential tower blocks. The rest are hotels or office buildings. The reason for that is simple. Construction space was and is quite limited. But one of the advantages of having all these high-rise structures is that they house a lot of people. So the city spends less on infrastructure, things like streets and electric and water utilities. That means that high-rises actually represent a more efficient and sustainable alternative.
But the office skyscrapers, with their glass facades, do use a lot of energy for air conditioning, which is essential given Panama's tropical climate. Such buildings may be visually striking, but they're not exactly environmentally friendly. Still, one business is bucking the trend. Morgan & Morgan is one of Panama City's most successful companies, and it's investing in a showcase construction project that addresses a number of environmental concerns. The design will be produced here. Eduardo Quintero studied in Miami and then honed his skills by working in the offices of a prominent American architect. Quintero and his wife, interior designer Ana Maria Zampoña, jumped at the opportunity to create an innovative high-rise structure that will also be environmentally friendly.
Our company, Forza Creativa, is committed to the implementation of green concepts and sustainability. We believe this is an important part of architectural design. Fortunately, my concept for this project matched that of the clients, so we didn't have to win them over. That was a big relief. It's quite satisfying for me to work on a project that is raising the standard of local architecture and is also taking environmental concerns into account. It's a brilliant concept.
Juan Felipe de la Iglesia is Morgan & Morgan's chief representative on the project. He's well aware that construction costs will run 10% higher than average. But Morgan executives believe that those costs will be far outweighed by the positive publicity that this groundbreaking concept will generate among the company's international clients. A green construction project of a very different kind is underway in New York City. Blake Karasik has been invited to have a look at one of the city's rooftop farms. A small tract of rural tranquility located at the top of an old multi-story industrial building. Local residents are encouraged to help out in the garden. This is basically a simplified version of Karasik's vertical farm concept.
Thanks so much for coming out. Welcome to the Purple Grange.
That's awesome.
The rooftop farm is owned and operated by Anastasia Cole-Plakias.
Tell me about the roof. How large is it and what kind of things do you grow and who do you sell to?
We are standing on an acre roof. It's about 40,000 square feet. And we grow about 16 to 20,000 pounds of produce every year. We sell a lot to restaurants. We also sell a lot to the community. So you want things that are a little off the beaten path that chefs get excited about, but you also want things that your average family can bring home for dinner and cook in their kitchen at home.
A number of similar projects have sprung up around New York. There's plenty of room for them too, considering all the empty roof space. The city authorities are actively supporting this kind of farming.
We don't use any chemical fertilizers or pesticides. We try to encourage a sort of naturally existing ecosystem, one that's self-sustaining, self-perpetuating, and can really be healthy with minimal intervention.
Great.
Rooftop farms have many advantages. They help reduce CO2 emissions, reduce the ambient temperature in summer, and they use rainwater.
We really wanted to explore urban agriculture as a fiscally sustainable industry. I believe that rooftop farming is an essential part of the city's future and urban agriculture in general. It will never replace its rural counterparts.
Karasik is convinced that his concept could provide at least a portion of the agricultural products consumed in New York on a daily basis. But the idea is still a little ahead of its time.
Vertical farming, as I've depicted it, will be realized at the point when farming in the city becomes economical, and when energy prices and other obstacles get in the way of the current situation of our food production system, then it will be more cost effective to build a vertical farm, and so as a result, vertical farms will follow. Yes, it definitely could be a solution even in Manhattan, even though the prices are exorbitantly high in Manhattan. Manhattan real estate is notorious for expense, but this is where all the people are. This is where most of the people are in the United States, so this is the perfect place for a vertical farm.
An eco tower like this could one day produce as much food as 1,000 hectares of farmland.
I think that vertical farms and hydroponic rooftop farms, underground aquaponic operations, these are all essential pieces of the same puzzle. How do we create a more sustainable way of living in cities in the 21st century?
This variation on the theme of environmentally sound urban architecture was developed by Belgian architect Vincent Calbeau. A fully self-sufficient ecosystem that rises 600 meters above an island in New York's East River. Many experts believe quite literally that the sky's the limit when it comes to modern structural architecture, and new designs will likely include elements that will allow people to live in greater harmony with the natural environment. Many of the mega cities of tomorrow can be found today in Asia, and they have the skyscrapers to prove it. Take, for example, the city-state of Singapore, which covers just over 700 square kilometers. There's no place for the buildings to go but up, and they're built close together. Singapore is one of the world's most highly developed market economies and is also a leading international financial center. It continues to attract foreign companies that want to expand into Asian markets. But despite its rampant vertical construction sprawl, Singapore is also the region's most environmentally friendly city. Shireen Taraz-Breinholt works for the respected Singapore architects Woha, where she's designing a public housing facility. The structure must provide generous living space at affordable rent. It's also got to be cost-effective to maintain and environmentally friendly. And it must take into account Singapore's tropical climate.
The classic design of a high-rise structure was developed in the West, which has a completely different climate. Those compact designs simply won't work here in the tropics. They're not appropriate for Singapore's climate. So we're trying to develop a new type of high-rise that has a more relaxed design, one that's more porous, increases the circulation of fresh air, and interacts more effectively with the climate. We're trying to design high-rise buildings that are more sustainable and that use artificial climate control as little as possible. This concept of environmental sustainability plays a key role in our designs. In this project, for example, it's represented in features that include sky streets and sky gardens, as we call them. In short, we make use of horizontal design elements in a vertical format.
Taraz-Breinholt has adapted concepts from an earlier Woha design project, the award-winning 36-story Newton Suites residential tower. Its distinctive features include water gardens, green common areas, specially designed balconies, and patterned exterior panels. The tower also makes use of rooftop planning, sky gardens, and vine-covered exterior walls that more than compensate for the ground the building takes up.
People shouldn't have to go without these green elements just because they live in a compact urban environment. By including sky gardens and open spaces in our design plan, we've managed to maintain a connection between a high-rise tower and the surrounding environment, even on the top floors.
Each of the tower's residential units features a small balcony garden. The gardens are popular with the residents, but they pale in comparison to the structure's most unusual green element.
Here, for instance, creeper vines cover the blank walls on the facade, from the top of the building to the bottom. We've developed a number of low-tech features for this project. In the case of the facade covering, it's just a series of plant troughs that contain the vines. It's not very complicated, and the plants don't require any special maintenance. In principle, it's important to provide shade for the building facades in tropical areas like ours, because it's the facades, not the roof, that absorb the most heat from the sun. So the facades need to be covered. At Newton Suites, we've installed woven wire mesh both horizontally and vertically. This screens out the sunlight without blocking the residents' view of the city.
Panama City aims to enhance its role as one of Latin America's leading cities when it comes to protecting the environment. But unlike in Singapore, the government here is not directly involved with construction. Eduardo Quintero and Juan Felipe de la Iglesia are on their way to a construction site a few kilometers northeast of Panama City's main business district, the MMG Tower. The building is located in a new development zone that features a lot of open space and green areas. The MMG Tower was designed to reduce energy consumption. Green areas on the roof will help mitigate the extra heat that's generated by the rest of the city. Solar panels will also enhance energy conservation. The design makes use of natural light and ventilation to create an optimal office environment. The MMG Tower is also the city's first high-rise built of structural steel. Most similar buildings use concrete frame construction. One of the advantages of using steel is that the large sections of the structure can be prefabricated. That speeds construction, and there aren't any bulky concrete supports to block the view. MMG chose this site specifically because it would complement the environmentally friendly office tower that they planned to build.
Morgan and Morgan decided that they wanted to build a new office tower, but they also wanted a structure that was green and sustainable. They're the largest law practice in Central America, and they wanted to demonstrate their commitment to protecting the environment. This building will do that. In addition, we wanted our design to qualify for top certification by the US Green Building Council.
They went the extra mile to come up with an appropriate design.
That's one of the reasons why we decided to use non-traditional construction methods. About 85% of the steel that we used came from recycling sources. All we need to do now is to give it its fire protection.
The Building Council's seal of approval takes into account not only the materials used in construction and structural design, but also whether the building has been designed to use energy efficiently. Quintero explains some of the tower's energy-saving features.
The elevators here, for example, are fitted with a unique energy regeneration system. So they use a lot less energy than conventional designs do.
The system is very energy efficient.
It's also important for all the facade elements to be well insulated. The windows are specially treated so they don't allow a lot of heat to get into the building. That's very important here, because we have a lot of sunshine. It's a very demanding project, and not just because it's the first tower we designed. I have a lot of international experience, so I know how architectural designs vary from place to place. But this is my first opportunity to complete a project for a big client in my home country. It's simply fantastic.
More than 5 million people live in Singapore. That's about 4 times the population of Panama City's metro area. Most of Singapore's residents live in high-rise buildings. How can the people who design these buildings help to maintain or even improve the quality of life in large Asian cities? The Woha architectural firm was founded by Wong Mun Sum and an Australian colleague, Richard Hassel. They specialize in creating alternative solutions that bring their high-rise buildings into greater harmony with the surrounding urban environment, and not soulless steel and glass structures that gobble energy like there's no tomorrow. The most distinctive feature of buildings designed by Woha is the greening of the external facade. Openings and meeting rooms, a concert hall, theaters and classrooms, all under one roof. It's called Sandwich, and it's energy efficient, as Shireen Taraz-Breinholt explains.
The main parts of the building were designed to maximize natural ventilation, so that even if there's no wind blowing outside, there'll always be a breeze inside. We also use natural ventilation in the classrooms, ceiling fans instead of air conditioners. There are also breezeways between the individual structures, and that also contributes to the natural ventilation.
Most of the energy that's consumed in the world's tropical regions is used to power cooling systems. But simple changes to the architecture can create natural ventilation systems that work so well that air conditioning isn't needed. A good example of this can be found at another high-rise structure designed by Woha, Moon Main Rise.
Let's come to the bay window, the monsoon window. All right. So this top layer is just to prevent small things from dropping through. And then the second layer is the slider. And this is a slider that allows you to open and close the window. And then you have the safety bars, and that's to prevent the size of a 100mm diameter ball from falling through. So that's a safety barrier. So the rain won't come in, but only the breeze will come in. So this is the monsoon window that allows natural ventilation 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And you really don't have to worry about running to close the window when it rains. So you can see at a higher level, you get the breeze, and the breeze is actually quite nice and strong and slightly drier than lower, perhaps. There are a few things that we can now, with this implemented, we know what's the problems with it, and we can actually improve them. One of the things is actually acoustic. By opening the windows in this way too, we also allow some of the noise to come up. And this is something that we think that we would like to address as well.
This is Wong's grand design for the city of the future, an integrated system of high-rises that offers a sustainable environment for homes and businesses.
If you try to create a high-density solution, you do have to go high-rise. And we really think what is really necessary is to duplicate the city not on one ground level, but to replicate this onto higher levels and into multiple levels. And you can see from this rendering too, is that we have almost 200 to 250 stories. And but what is really quite important is within this lattice city at this kind of height, to get the quality of good fresh air and natural light, sunlight is actually very important for the city.
High-rise buildings are undergoing a major transition in design as architects develop new ways to increase sustainability and energy efficiency. The world's major urban areas will continue to reach for the sky, but the structures that dominate the skyline will take on an increasingly green character. Ecological high-rise architecture is the buzzword and a key technology for the future.